Hey guys, we are live. Welcome to the Indie Show. And you guys, I am so freaking excited this morning. So we have the Natalie Franke with us this morning. And we have been talking for the last like 20 minutes. And I'm just so excited to dig into things with Natalie. If you guys are watching, give me like a hi in the comments so that I can see who's there. And Natalie, I feel like a lot of people who are going to watch this are going to know who you are. And if they don't know your name, they're at least going to kind of know the businesses that you're a part of.
Yeah.
But when people ask what it is that you do, what's like your go-to like 2-second pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. So my pitch is this, and actually, well, I should step back. Our sweet friend, Danny Fountain, made it very clear to me that an elevator pitch should apply directly to the audience that is listening, not just having one elevator pitch. She's, you know how she is. She's just a genius in every way. So for this purpose, I think what I would say is I am a wedding photographer turned community builder that created the Rising Tide Society alongside some amazing co-founders. And that adventure led me into Silicon Valley and tech through a merger with HoneyBook. And so I wear a lot of hats. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a community builder. I am now a woman in tech. I lead a massive team. I lead a volunteer army of creatives, and we're on a mission to change the world, as cheesy as that sounds, but really and genuinely to change the world.
You guys, like, Natalie is doing like amazing things. And if you know who she is, you know kind of how excited I am right now.
Make me sound, here's the thing. Here's like the big thing I like to point out. I am but a small part of a much larger movement. And when you lead something, you get a lot of the credit. But what's really important, and I like to stress anytime I'm ever on anything, is that I have a team that makes me look very good. It's my team. Like, I have an extraordinary group of people that run, day to day, that the leaders, like the local leaders, we've got over 600 local volunteer chapter leaders that are reshaping the creative industry in their local community. So really, to be frank, like, they should get most of the credit for the work they do every single day. I just have the honor and privilege of helping to organize everybody. So you're really sweet. But
well, no, you're a tremendous leader in the space. And you are also very, very humble. Nicole Abood says hi, and that you're humble. So, Natalie, we're going to get into, Rising Tide Society, HoneyBook, Tuesdays Together, all this stuff. When you first tell people your bigger story, where do you usually start?
So it really depends. I think, it all kind of originates for me being a kid growing up in Annapolis, Maryland, daughter of a single mom. I started working at a really young age. So I discovered entrepreneurship when I was washing hair at a hair salon. And I fell in love with this idea that these women at this hair salon had their own clients. They were creating great client experiences for them. And this something sparked in me, where my whole life I had thought I would work at a 9-to-5, a corporate job. I had this perception of, going in all fancy with my blazer and looking all professional and stepping foot into this amazing company and just feeling important. Like, this was what I thought my life would be. And here I saw these phenomenal women that didn't go into a corporate job, that, were building life for themselves. And it just fascinated me. Simultaneously, I got a camera in my hands around the same age and started photographing. And so for me, photography at first became a creative outlet. Then it became a financial support system for my family. I mentioned being raised by a single mom. Shooting weddings paid my way through Penn. And so I was able to shoot weddings on the weekend in Baltimore, take the train back to Philadelphia, continue my schooling. And when I graduated, I dove wholeheartedly into running a small business. So I think that's really where it started. It came from a place of, I think, self-discovery and necessity. I didn't have the luxury of just hanging out and waiting to see what happened with my life. I had a couple instances, especially growing up, where I had to help my family. I had to make money. And in order to do that, I had to be a smart and savvy businesswoman. And so I basically started learning really young, like 15, 16, 17. I was making money on my own. And then after I graduated, my business exploded, right? Here comes Rising Tide, because as anyone knows who's working really hard to build something that they need for, whether it's their family, their professional growth, whatever it is, when you're working that hard at something, it can be very lonely. You can feel very alone in the pursuit of success. And that's exactly how I felt. And although, you know, I was doing well financially with my business, I had never felt more isolated. And so I desired to create a corporate environment in a world of solopreneurship. I wanted the ability to have people connected. And Rising Tide was born out of that desire.
I think that that's so important. And I really do love that the Rising Tide Society is a thing. Now, full disclosure, I made it to one Tuesdays Together group in St. Louis when I was there. I haven't made it to a Chicago one yet. I hope Elizabeth Nord.
Best, Joey, Chicago.
I know. I gotta go. Hopefully Elizabeth Nord is watching and she's gonna get me to go. She's fantastic. But I completely understand what you're saying because I run a solo business here in Chicago and it can get very isolating. And you and I connected kind of randomly through like a pizza dinner date while you were in town. And
it is my love language. I mean, coffee.
Yeah. And that evening of dinner with like other small business owners, like is one of my favorite nights in Chicago now, because like having that community of other business owners where you kind of speak the same language in kind of a more isolated space, you know, day to day, it really does mean a lot. So if you guys have, if you want to know more about Tuesdays Together, go ahead and just put Tuesdays in the comments and we'll follow up. And if you have been to some of them before, let us know in the comments as well. Everybody that I've talked to that has gone to one really seems to enjoy them. So let's talk more about what's on my agenda here. Oh, you guys, please share this video. We're going to get into some really cool stuff. And as many people that can hop on live and contribute, please do so. Stella says Tuesdays. Stella will send you some more info. Nancy says hi. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, good morning.
Okay, let's get into some nitty gritty stuff.
Let's do it.
Let's talk social media because you guys, like, in a lot of ways, Natalie, like you said, like you started working at 15 and you kind of caught a lot of this entrepreneurship stuff before it started to get more mainstream.
Yeah.
And so you've been working at this for a while now.
Yes.
And things are changing.
Every day.
And I know as a lot of creatives, this social media thing is something that a lot of people are just really trying to wrap their heads around.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of your go-to advice for people when they're like, I'm just starting, I need to get the word out about what I'm doing. I don't even know where to start as a business on social media.
Well, look, I think there are two kind of tracks that I see. So there's the one which you just mentioned, which is it's a crazy world out there and they're intimidated to even dip their toe into the water. So there's that group. There's also the group, though, that's maybe been playing around with social for a long time, but isn't seeing the results that they want or feels overwhelmed at the constant change and flux of things. And it all boils down to a couple of suggestions that I constantly give. And the irony here is that they have very little to do with social media and a lot more to do with just traditional marketing strategies applied to a different context, right? So you need to better understand what your goal is out of social media. You know, I think that every business is going to have a different objective. What I like to say is with what I do, social media is not where I sell. You're not going to find me hardcore selling a product on social. Might mention it, but not selling. Because to me, I want to use social to build an audience, to build trust with that audience, to provide them value constantly and where they live, key, where your audience lives. So depending on the demographics that you're trying to target, that might change where you're actually leveraging social. For instance, I don't use Snapchat anymore because my audience, the minute Instagram stories came out, they were already on Instagram. So it didn't make sense for me to continue using a platform where the majority of my audience wasn't and trying to push them there versus finding where they live. So finding where they are and being able to, use social to drive towards those goals and objectives. So I think I would just start with that. Who are you trying to target and what is your goal with social? If it is purely to increase your revenue stream, then my thought would be, okay, let's look at platforms that enable you to build your email list, that enable you to kind of funnel people off of the platform and onto something you own this is the key.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Here's the thing. I want to this is something that like I teach on all the time, but I want to build a course on. And the irony here is I'm like, I can't build a course called Grow Your Following, because the reality is that's not what I want people to do. They need to build a platform, but the truth is it's not going to benefit them financially in their business if it doesn't ladder up to an overall strategy towards a sale, right? Which generally means you've got to get them off of the platform. There are obviously loops around that. There are ways, you know, for instance, that fashion bloggers will link to something they're wearing directly on Instagram and they make affiliate income. There's that. But in the grander scheme for what most of us are doing, social media is that conversation. It's the relationship, and it gives you validity, and it gives you the perception of, you know, just value. It gives the perception of value. It isn't value. It isn't necessarily like associated with the worth of a business, but in the mind of a consumer, they go to social media to see maybe reviews, but also to see, is this person relevant in their space? I hear this all the time where my friends get engaged here, and the first thing they do when they're looking for a professional for their wedding is they go to Instagram. And I've heard them say things like, oh, whoa, she has a big following on Instagram. And suddenly their perception of the business is now different because of the social proof that is associated with the following. It's a fascinating, you know, sort of psychological experiment.
Oh, I think it's so, and I love that you gave that example, because in the legal world of lawyers who are trying to promote their services, and I think this is kind of true for a lot of more general business industries, a lot of people are saying your main goal should be to be able to be found on Google. And sure, there's some truth to that. But what you just said is that there are industries where people are now going to another search platform asking for these things. And
Absolutely.
Someone who I talk to, she's like, you guys, I've stopped Google searching for stuff that I need. I go on Facebook and I say, who has a recommendation for X?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the demand. So it's basically this idea of instant gratification and sort of, because here's the thing, Google can still serve instant gratification, but Google doesn't come with people reaching out to you, personally giving their recommendation in a way that triggers pleasure centers in your brain. So an interesting thing, social media companies like Facebook and Instagram, they actually study how they can make their platforms more addicting. I have friends here that have worked at some companies and tell me that they will even withhold notifications from you because it increases your fear of inadequacy. And then when they push a ton of notifications at you, it releases serotonin and dopamine in your brain and makes you feel, oh yeah, I'm important, I'm valued. So like there's so much happening here that is sort of scary, to be honest with you, when it comes to social platforms. But the reason I bring it up is just that we get caught up in it. So I think it's kind of sucked a lot of the consumer world in, where they even get their news from Twitter and not from CNN. Yep. Like, it's fascinating. So like Facebook doesn't just compete with Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Facebook now is competing with Netflix and Hulu, because what Facebook is competing for is the attention economy. It wants your attention. That's what it wants. It wants your time on the platform. It's why we started vlogging. It's why we started using video, because Facebook knows that native video content increases user retention on the platform. So if you're trying to fight an algorithm and you're not figuring out how to get your content seen, look at what's going to best interest the platform. They want video. So if you're producing video like this, it's going to enable people to stay on the platform longer, and it actually is going to help you get your message across better, because Facebook's going to push it.
I love it. And I want to go back to this idea of the kind of the neuroscience behind this all, because I think this is so freaking interesting. But if you will just indulge me in just a second, I want to talk about something while we're on the topic of platforms.
Yes.
A lot of people who are watching know that I kind of have beef with Etsy. And I just want to take a moment here to specify what I mean, which is that if you're at a place where you are on Etsy right now and you're making money, I am not telling you to shut down your store and start another site right away. But the thing here is that you have to figure out your way off of that platform, because there are legal and business reasons why depending on a platform is bad for business. And it's not just Etsy. That's just my example, because a lot of my people run in that crowd. Do you agree?
Yeah, because every hour you spend on Instagram is an hour that you're building Mark Zuckerberg's website, not yours. Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. So I think that it's all about thinking of how to leverage these platforms to bring people to something you own. It can't be that these platforms are your business. because you don't own them. So I don't know, I'm not, up on the legalities of, for instance, Etsy, but I can tell you from a perspective of even just being a small business owner on Instagram, if Instagram tomorrow, and they look what happened. Let's use the history. Let's not even say what if. When Instagram changed its algorithm, it absolutely impacted the bottom line of a lot of people that were depending on their content being seen on Instagram to directly benefit their business. So when the algorithm changed, unless people were seeing their content, unless people were engaging with their content, their bottom line took a hit. And my thought here is, we can't think about these platforms as the be-all, end-all. These are just the tools to navigate people to our ultimate goal, which is either driving to an email funnel, right? Like acquiring the email address, or bringing them to our blog or our website where they can consume our content and they can get to know us better. But nonetheless, it has to kind of come back to something that you own. You don't control or own those platforms. And if they pack up tomorrow and leave, and that's the only place you've invested your business, then you're putting your hands in, you're putting business in the hands of someone else. And that's just not something that I'd ever advocate for. I think Nancy's spot on. Yes. Yeah. It's for building an audience, building a platform, networking with others. Absolutely.
I love it. So, and I think this is all very true. So if you are working on a platform, you guys know that I love Facebook. Like, it's great. Just know that you have to, as a business and not just a side hobbyist, you have to be able to plan for the unexpected.
Absolutely.
So 2 things there. One, when it comes to like the attention kind of psychology behind what these platforms are doing, does that rub you the wrong way? Are you like, no, this is cool, like this is actually like, I think, helping us? Or is it kind of slimy?
So I think that where I come from with it is, at first I find things fascinating. I love what Danny just said, by the way. I just want to highlight that. I mean, I think, they're brand builders. They help you to build that platform, build that validity, as we said, like basically to establish your brand, online. But going back to, ultimately, it's neuromarketing. So it's a field that I study, a field I've read books in. I'm very fascinated by. There are firms out here in Silicon Valley that their entire job is neuromarketing. Like they basically, like Roger Dooley is an amazing author who I admire. And I might be one of, like, I don't think they have fangirls. I don't think neuroscientists have fangirls, but I am one of Roger Dooley's. And I think he has like 400 followers on Instagram, and I like comment all this stuff.
I love it.
Because I find it fascinating. Whether or not it's slimy, I think, is where intentionality comes in. So with any form of technology, I argue, the technology itself is neither good nor bad. It's how it is used. So the knowledge and the science behind understanding the human mind is neither good nor bad. It's how it's used. So for instance, you could say something like, news media in general. It could be propaganda, which could be bad, or it could be informative, which could be good. So that's where I stand with it. I do think it can be scary if you're not aware of what's happening. Like for instance, certain applications that, and you probably know more about this from the legal perspective, that when you sign up for them, you're signing away a lot of privacy oftentimes that you don't realize you're giving away. Even auditory, like some of these, PlayStation now listens to you. Like there are things like Alexa, we're putting devices in our homes that listen to everything that we're saying, and we might think like, oh, but I'm not saying anything that's bad, or I'm not saying anything that's going to get me arrested. But you're talking about the things you care about and the things you're worried about. You're talking about items you need to buy. And so it's giving advertisers the ability to actually shape your decisions, whether you know it or not. And that to me gets to be a little interesting. And I want to see it used for good. I want to see it used more to like help people donate money and drive us towards caring about human rights and like those types of things. So I find it, and I try to look for the good, but it can go both ways.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty spot on, is that it's a tool and we can decide if you want to use it for good or evil. But I'm with you. I'm hopeful. The next thing is, and let's hopefully at some point, Kent will jump in on this. So you guys, Natalie has this awesome blog that she started. You guys are like approaching your 50th episode if you're not already on 50.
Yes, I think we are at 49 on Friday. I think. Maybe it's 48. Yes, we're nearing 50.
You guys just write vlog, VLOG, in the comments, and I'll give you guys a link to the main vlog page that's on their YouTube channel. It's fan-freaking-tastic. You guys do such a good job with it, and it's such a good way for people to kind of see the human side of what you guys are doing. But you also have Kent Heckle, who's like a godsend in editing and shooting all of that. And I know a lot of people right now are thinking about trying to embrace video in some way.
Yeah.
For people who don't have a Kent Heckle, like what's some things that they can do to get a little bit better at this video space?
Absolutely. So important thing just to kind of kick off with, video is king. Right now, video is king. So much so that the statistics out there are astounding. A third of the time people spend on the web right now, according to HubSpot, is spent watching video. And by 2020, Cisco believes that 70% of all mobile traffic and mobile data traffic will be video streaming. So it's the future, ultimately, I think, of this attention economy in general, because people are moving away from traditional cable television at night with their TV dinner to sitting on Insta stories and letting it roll for hours and watching.
I didn't even know that was a thing. And I was talking to, I don't know if you know Tyler McCall.
Yeah. Oh, do I know? I love Tyler. Tyler's phenomenal.
He's fantastic. But I was like, dude, like, because I don't really know Instagram. I'm still trying to get to know that platform better. And I was like, what's the deal with stories? Like, how should I be watching them? Because I don't really know what to do with it. And he was like, a lot of people will just push the first one and start brushing their teeth, and it just plays throughout the morning.
I do that as well. No, I really do. Maybe not when I'm brushing my teeth and I'm doing my makeup, but it's a similar thing, you know?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So if you're someone that's saying, hey, I keep hearing this, Nat, I keep hearing, I love this. Another stat out there that says 80% of consumers need to see a video of something before making a purchase. Yeah, I also read another one that says emails. So like click rate in an email is increased by 200 to 300% when you include a video or a screenshot of a video in your email. Like these things that are just because there's some human element that's now, it's purple cow, right? It's still purple cow. So it's like Seth Godin talks about basically this concept of purple cow, if you're not familiar, but the idea of basically standing out. It's the idea of being different and standing out. And video is still, I mean, it's everywhere, but it's still at a place where it is very much something that not everyone is doing. And some people are very afraid of it. So they're hesitant to incorporate it, or they don't have a Kent Heckle. So they look at what we're doing and go, oh, I can't do that. But the truth is anyone can do it. Instagram stories is a great place to start. Because it's fleeting, it lasts for 24 hours. So you don't have the pressure of creating content that lives eternally, right? In the internet space, it's fleeting, it's temporary. Facebook Watch is fascinating. So Nancy, actually, we pitched a show to Facebook Watch earlier this week.
Did you really?
Yeah. And I mean, because they're targeting and they're going to be going head to head, I'm telling you, with Netflix and Hulu. Like this is the future. So I think if you're looking at this and you're going, how does this help my business? How do I get involved in video? Why should I get involved in video? I would say start small and start in a place where there isn't the pressure for editing and production. So Instagram stories, lives like this, anywhere, hi Mitch, anywhere where you have the ability to basically create content quickly with very little friction and enable sort of that audience interaction as well if possible. And so while lives are great because people can actually engage while we're doing the show and afterwards, and we'll be popping in and kind of following up with people after that watch the replay, Instagram stories allows for direct messaging. Snapchat also allows for direct messaging. So I would say start with Instagram stories if you're on that platform. If you don't use video, you're likely not on Snapchat. So, I probably wouldn't advocate going and starting a Snapchat because for the most part, it's a very niche demographic. And it's a lot of, the way people are using it is very different than something like Instagram even. Pinterest is even now allowing promoted video pins.
Really?
LinkedIn now has native video, and Twitter is pushing their Twitter video also. So it's like across the board, and we're experimenting with all of it and getting some good data on it. But the key here is, experiment.
And you guys like their vlogs that they do are not just like, let's follow these cool people around, but like you guys give a lot of like really great tips. And here Mitch says, create quickly and engagement, #boom. Mitch, you're right on. And something that I have really seen is super helpful is embracing not just video, but live video.
Yes. Because
there's something really cool about this. I think in a lot of ways, even though it can be nerve-wracking to be live and you go up there and you see that there's no eyes on you for a while, the great thing about it is that you don't have to worry about, ooh, I just messed up, let me do a take two. And then you're 15 takes in and you've got a minute to show for it. Or you feel like you have to go back and edit. The great thing about these live videos is that you get the engagement. Your viewers kind of understand that we're human. We can make mistakes.
That's a benefit.
Yeah.
I have to there. That is so live video from the standpoint of looking at how to build affinity, build trust with your audience. There's a world out there where everything is photoshopped. Like I'm coming, you know, I mean, we mentioned I've been building a business since I was 15. My thesis at UPenn was on digital manipulation and the psychological ramifications of that in young women. And I argued that it's not digital manipulation, it's digital mutilation of self, the idea of self. And so like, we live in a world where everything is, you know, manipulated and everything feels fake, and even reality TV isn't real. I mean, it's a struggle that I think people are craving authenticity. They're craving vulnerability. They're craving something that they can relate to. And so the beauty of live video is that it's not perfect. The beauty of video is that it is real. It's a human. They see a human. And the way in which we empathize with others, the way in which our mirror neurons fire for one another, which is sort of like a correlative of empathy, many neuroscientists argue, it doesn't happen when you read somebody's comment on a post, right? It happens when you see another human being that you can start to almost imagine yourself feeling the way they feel, or understanding and getting behind what they care about. Joey, I think it's one of the reasons why, you know, you and I met, and then I started following all your videos, and I had this moment, I'm like, Joey is just as genuine online as he is in person. He cares a lot about his craft. He cares a lot about the people he serves. He wants to be out there educating, not just to benefit his business, but because he sees the impact it makes in the world. And being able to see the video of that really helps. That helps me as someone that may need a lawyer one day, and or we'll tag you in a vlog and say, we need a lawyer, Joey, calling out Joey, right? It's because I feel like I know you. And that comes from video, and live video just amplifies that.
Well, I think it really helps people get to know you better.
Absolutely.
And I think it also helps you get to know not just your following better, but also who your target market is.
Yeah.
Because I had this idea of my law firm, and then it kind of morphed into this branded indie law, which has been great. But over time, because I have live video, a lot of it, and because I'm virtual, so I do a lot of video calls with, potential clients and stuff like that. I've gotten a better idea of who it is that really is my target market, and kind of who, and just like, to be totally honest with you guys, like, yeah, I'm an attorney for creative entrepreneurs, small business owners. I do IP stuff, and if those are your needs, we can work together. But like, my niche is people who think of me as like their adorable little nephew that's good with computers. And they're at a space with their business where they're already like pretty successful. They never really got all these little ducks in a row, and they want somebody who they like and trust to take care of it. Trust
is the key.
Yep.
That word that you just said is the key, especially in law, because every industry has its perceptions to fight against. And law is one that I think what you're doing and what others are doing, especially anyone who's commenting on this right now, like Mitch, Nancy, I have a gut feeling that like you're also in your industry kind of sharing and creating these same and Danny's a great example of this too, building trust.
You guys, Danny is, I know. Danny's fantastic. So actually,
I have a girl crush on Danny.
I have a
real crush.
Danny and I are Instagram dating. So Nancy has a really good point here. She says that we're right, and but the main thing is being approachable and human goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Nancy, and I appreciate that. So I want to kind of shift gears, going from kind of like these like talking points to more about what you're doing. Before I do that, first let me show this comment from Danny. Love you, Danny. You guys, let's share this again, because at this point we're going to start talking about more of what Natalie's up to and how you can follow her. So Natalie, can we talk about this monthly guide?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
We create a monthly guide every month on a different business topic, and it's ranged from content marketing to email marketing. We share it with our community. This one's on creative risk taking, so it's really exciting. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about whatever we want to talk about the guide, but yeah.
No, I think that sounds awesome. And I think that risk taking is such, I think, a powerful topic right now. And it's one of those things where it's easy to say, and I think it's getting thrown around a lot.
Yes.
But to actually think about what it means for your business and be real about what you are scared of and kind of pushing those pressure points.
Yeah. Both personally and professionally. Like,
yeah.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think it's also easy to play it safe, to sit back as a business and kind of say, okay, well, you know, I know my status quo, I know how things are going. But in doing that, you know, we're at a place, especially with technology, we keep talking about technology, but especially with technology, where if you're not taking risks and you're not experimenting and trying new things and innovating, you're falling behind.
And you might fail.
Failure, okay, here's the thing. Failure is only failure if you don't get back up. This is what I believe. Like, you know how many times I've failed in the last month, in the last quarter? If you ask people, they're like, yeah, that Natalie, she keeps screwing up everything. I fail constantly. And I don't just fail privately. I fail publicly. I fail constantly. Here's the best part about failure. You learn and you become more resilient. Now, I want to encourage you to fail micro, right? Like micro failures. I don't think put all of your business capital in a crazy risk and take the leap and leave your full-time job before you're ready and then not have food on the table. That's very different than taking small micro risks that could lead to failure, but failure that you can come back from. So I think that's kind of that balance that I want to put in there.
I want to bring up this point.
Ooh.
Mitch Jackson, I don't know if he's still watching, but this is something that he and I talked about with a group of other attorneys just last month, which was that, you know, yes, you need to be, you know, pivoting and failing in your business, but don't buy what they say to like fail your way to success, because especially if part of your business is that you have this trust factor and you can fail once and you have to learn from it and not fail in that space again.
It's basically the idea of, so here's where I come from. I agree, but I'm going to add a little like of my own opinion in here.
Yep.
I think that when I hear fail your way to success, what I hear is fail, learn from it, and don't be afraid of failing again. But the key here that we both agree on is learn from it. Don't make the same mistake over and over and over and over again, because ultimately you're going to find yourself in a place where people don't trust. And they don't feel like they understand where you're coming from. But nonetheless, like I think less people suffer from failing at the same thing over and over, in my opinion, over and over and over again. The majority of people, at least in my community that I speak to, are afraid to try. Or they have given up. Let's see. I think the term that we keep hearing is fail often and fail fast. Yeah, I think it was, is it Michael Hyatt? Somebody says fail forward. The idea of like failing forward towards success. But it's an interesting conversation. Like, I love this, Mitch. That's what it is. You can fail frequently, but not at the same thing. Show the ability to improve and to learn. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. But I still see more people, I think, in the realm of like so those people who are failing a lot are, I think, honestly, like at least in the scale of towards success and that idea, that's the minority. Like that, most people that I hear from and that I interact with, they come to me and they're saying like, they want permission. Yep. They want permission to even start. Like they're afraid of.
Okay, so let's get real, because there are a lot of creatives who I think are in this boat, and kind of in one room or the other. Like there are a lot of people who are afraid to start. And yes, you need to act, right?
Yeah.
There are other people who, and this is a really hard situation, but you have gotten to a point where you have started, you are acting, you've invested, you're trying to create, let's just do the photography example. You're trying to build a business around your photography. Absolutely. And you're trying different things and it's just not working well.
Yeah.
At some point, if you can't have the mindset of, I've been digging this ditch and I just have to keep digging because there might be gold at the bottom, instead of maybe let me get out of this hole. And I'm not a business coach. I don't pretend to be one. I'm not saying that you should stop what you're doing, but you have to realize that there's that possibility.
Yes.
That the problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, again, it goes back to this idea too of the role, and this is something that we were talking about even just a couple of weeks ago. It didn't make the vlog, but it was a conversation we talked about, which was, you know, we live in a world in which social media glorifies the entrepreneur. Social media glorifies the climb. It glorifies success. It makes you feel as though everyone can be successful, when statistics actually argue the complete opposite when it comes to business and how many businesses fail and how many businesses succeed. So I think here, you know, it is a case by case, but there's also this underlying issue where if you're someone who has been trying and failing and continually learning from it, and you are at a place where you, whether it's a financial reason, you're like, I just can't afford to continue down this path any longer, or if it's a you know, psychological, like the defeat is too much, and you know that, because again, entrepreneurship, side note, not for everyone. There is a reason why 1 in every 3 entrepreneurs suffers from depression and anxiety. The suicide rate among entrepreneurs is one of the highest in like any demographic pool of people. It's something we've talked about a lot at Rising Tide. It's something that we address frequently. There have been articles written about it from members in our community, because it is very, very, very hard, and it is not for everyone, and not for everyone, not just, I mean, like, again, my sister's in medical school, and she said to me, she said, Natalie, look, every human being is different. We all have different things, whether it's arthritis. Some of us have, you know, heart disease. Some of us are born with genetic abnormalities. Some of us have disabilities. And some of us have mental illness. And the hard part is that we live in a world where mental illness often isn't seen on the outside. And so, you know, people struggle, and they struggle silently. And I know in the entrepreneurial world, I fall into this category. I have depression and anxiety. It's not a secret, it's something I talk about, but it is something that impacts the way in which I run a business. I've had to come to terms with the fact that I need a support system in place. I can't hustle 24/7. There are times where I need to shut off from the world for just a little while. And I need to build a team around me at times to shelter me from the hardship of certain things. That doesn't make me weak. It makes me a smart businesswoman in understanding my limitations. So the glorification on social media, I think, often drives people to think that they are invincible, and that everyone they see out there is invincible too, and that quitting or giving up or trying a different business or going back and getting a part-time job, or like myself, like others, living in 2 worlds where I'm an entrepreneur, I run a small business, I also am in tech, I'm now employed, this is a new thing for me. None of it's failure, right? Like none of it, it's just, it's embracing and being willing to accept life's changes.
So that was so good. And I want to apologize right now to Kent, who in the middle of all of that goodness, I just had Danny's comment there. So Kent, if I give you this video and you try and repackage it into a good clip, try and deal around Danny's face.
I love you, Danny.
That was
or
so
don't.
good.
Danny's face can be up there all day.
I love it.
Oh, guys, I love this. Not only failures and success, but entrepreneurs are massively. Yes. And I think the predisposed part here is the part where people feel differently. Some people say, you know, it's the toll that entrepreneurship takes on you that causes depression. I would actually argue with Danny on this one. I think that my personality, as a result of the things I struggle with, actually led me to becoming an entrepreneur. I am high highs and low lows. Mm-hmm. I thrive on the adrenaline rush of building, but that also comes with the cost of the down, the low, the struggle. So I don't know. I think the predisposition is an interesting concept there. I also think there's been studies done, and people talked about, for example, Australia and the United States, and the rapid rate of entrepreneurship in both of those countries, and people believing that a lot of people, it's like this idea of the types of people who go west. Like there's a certain type of person that goes west, right? This doesn't apply to everyone, obviously, but like certain people go west, and is there some correlation between, there was a cool article, it might have been on Inc. or Fast Company.
I love how you not just have a passion for that stuff, but you're also like well-versed in it, and you can be like, oh, this is super, super interesting. And here's like a legit article on the topic. You're just awesome. But I really identify with this because I am doing what I am now because I realized that I don't have the characteristics that I need to be a strong litigating attorney, and I'm not meant to be in the courtroom. And so that allowed me to pivot in this space. And this is a much better fit for me, but entrepreneurship is hard. And a lot of what made the courtroom scene hard, I'm now realizing is also carrying itself over into this space. So I think that this segues really, really well into this idea of community over competition.
Yep, absolutely.
And we can talk about this. I think we can go in a lot of directions with this, and I want to get kind of your opinion on some things around the phrase.
Yep.
For those of you guys who aren't familiar, Natalie and her businesses have kind of coined this phrase about community over competition. Maybe we'll talk about the trademark implications of that, because I think it's super, super interesting. A lot of people think that because they coined a term that they just called dibs.
We don't own the trademark on community over competition. We do own it on Tuesdays Together and Rising Tide Society, but we do not own it on community over competition. Yes.
Love it. I actually really like that a lot.
I did it purposefully. That was a conscious decision. We can definitely talk about that. Do you want me to? Let me dive in. Let's just explain what it is. Because here's the thing.
Let's go into what it is.
People hear it and they either there's like a couple different assumptions that happen. I either hear this is what I've been waiting for my whole life. Thank you. Or I often hear, well, that's ridiculous. Competition is a good thing. Okay. So let me kind of set the record straight here with sort of what the term means, at least in the context that we use it. Community over competition does not mean that competition is bad. It also doesn't mean a world without competition. Notice it says over and not without. So the key here is the concept of community over competition says that we are all human beings and we want to live in a world in which when we succeed, it is not at the expense of other people. We don't step on other people to rise, but rather we do our part to help all of us rise together. It is an idea where basically it boils down to that. Community, people come before, the dog-eat-dog world of aggressive competition that many people are familiar with in business. And we want to redefine that. I think that it's something that many entrepreneurs can relate to when maybe they're new and starting. And, we've seen crazy things happen. I'm sure you have as well, where people will write false reviews about a newcomer in town just to hurt their business, where people will exclude a small business owner from a group or a community simply to hurt their business. And what we really want to do is say, look, we want us all to win. We realize it's not going to happen. We realize that not everyone's going to succeed. We don't live in a world of unicorns and fairies and thinking that, in Silicon Valley, there are a lot of unicorns, but that's a different type of unicorn. But really we don't. We live in a real world where we understand the risks everyone takes, and we just don't want people out there trying to destroy one another in the pursuit of their own individual success. Harvard Business Review talks about this in a really interesting way. They're saying they're seeing a shift from this idea of leadership to communityship. The idea of it's not, one out for one, but it's the ability for one person to be out for the good of many. Douglas Atkin, who is our advisor, he's the global head of community at Airbnb. I was talking to him not long ago, and he basically said, this idea of community over competition, especially with what Rising Tide is doing in our space, it's a modern guild. So what that means is just as blacksmiths used to come together and they all competed for the same business, but they would gather and support one another in the pursuit of, laws, litigation, or their rights to assemble, or, whatever it was, they would gather together and support one another when it benefited the community, the industry. And what we've basically done is said, as a community, we need a place where we can do that, because we also don't know what lies on the horizon. Imagine if there was a law passed that impacted every one of our businesses in a way that was so detrimental to us that we needed to organize. Community and being able to say we all stand on the same ground, we all stand together, it gives you power in numbers. It's a big deal. And the community that we've had in the past has been very isolated. Everyone's been in silos. Everyone has their small groups. There are clicks here, clicks there. And like I said, it's this competitive atmosphere. And we've really tried to change that. And so that's what that means. That's the idea, the vision. And it's just a part of what we want the creative economy to look like.
I absolutely love it. And I think that it's obviously been something that people, when they see it and they hear it, they're like, oh, that's what I've been looking for. Yeah. And so you guys are actually building an entire community around this idea, which is very cool. So it's not just like let's talk about this and make it happen, but you're actually building this community, which I think is awesome. I wanted to bring this up and segue it from our recent conversation because I'm starting to realize a consequence of community over competition, which I hadn't thought about like 4 or 5 months ago, which was that going back to, if you feel like for whatever reason, you know, you enjoy your space, but you're realizing that the entrepreneurship side of it is too hard for you or whatever. Right. There is a lot of space now, and especially with like more thriving creatives happening, where there's this opportunity and you shouldn't feel bad to say, hey, I don't really want to run a business anymore, but I love what you're doing. And when you start hiring people, let's talk. You know?
Yes.
And I'm really excited for like the sequel of, you know, what's happening now to be not just solopreneur creatives, but team-based creatives where people are, you know, joining forces like that. Because I feel like that's just like the natural, you know, result of what's happening now.
And we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing that same exact thing happening. So for instance, it's not just like there was a viral video that got posted in Rising Tide of these two creatives that met on the Rising Tide Facebook group and then flew across the country. This was like last year, met each other. And it's like this epic scene. They're like running toward each other, hugging each other in the airport. They've now just launched a business together. And they're going in together, not separate, but they're actually going in together. And so I think that that is interesting. And I think, you know, we will start to see more collaborative teams being built. Collectives are becoming more and more popular. That term even is becoming more and more popular. You know, when a group will come together and actually work as one team as opposed to like 5 different solopreneurs. I think it's fascinating. I think it's exciting. I think that, you know, there have always been small businesses that are made up of teams. I just think that it's a different world. It's a different world when you have people that come at it from the way in which they are now, where, you know, they discover entrepreneurship through being in it alone, and then they are an entrepreneur, and then they come together to build. I mean, I think it's actually kind of very empowering. For example, out here in the tech world in Silicon Valley, I mean, one of the things that makes certain startups so successful is that it's not one. I mean, we look at things when we see Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and like, you know, he's phenomenal, but that's not the case with all startups. It's oftentimes not one dynamic leader and a group of employees. If you've got 8 people, you want 8 entrepreneurial minds autonomously running in their like respective verticals to make the company successful. And so you even seeing that, you start to see this crossover where, you know, Kent, you mentioned, myself, we're out here now in tech in Silicon Valley. And I was like, I didn't realize how many entrepreneurial minds were out here. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see. And I had a call last week with a friend of mine from Virginia who's now getting poached by this killer startup in New York because they even see the value in this rise of the entrepreneur, because it trains you to be very, very self-sufficient, autonomous, critical at thinking, strategic. And it's interesting. It's it's a whole new world. And doing that, as a side note, like being a creative or being a small business owner, and then also getting involved, either it's in the tech space or the startup space or the corporate space. Again, it's not failing. This is so like, it's not failing, right? It's not failing. I think we can't fall victim to the glorification of entrepreneurship as the only version of success in life.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. This is like my favorite right now. You're a really, really good guest. We'll figure out a way to bring someone from HoneyBook on like every month.
This is fun. I love it. I love it.
So I think that's awesome. And, you know, you talk about entrepreneurship, you talk about the scene. One thing that we talked about before we hit the play button that I wanted to revisit was, in a lot of ways, I think when people look to you and the community that you're building and what you're putting out there, it's all very much female.
Yeah, it is. It's 84% female.
Which is, I think, is fantastic. But you do work with men.
Yes.
And so my wife, she's in the corporate world. She has a great business. She loves the company that she works for. But she still kind of feels the fact that it's a white man running the show all the time. Like, yeah. Are you at a space now where, because of the culture that you're building, like you don't feel that as much, or do you still feel that pretty regularly?
It's an interesting conversation, because I come from a place where with Rising Tide, we've actually been working hard to bring more men in. So because it started with a lot of very strong women leading something forward, it attracted a lot of very strong women. And so we've been working hard to bring, like Kent, you, like people that are incredible and we need in our community. So we've actually had the reverse sort of conversation of not being like, you know, it's like, how do we be more inclusive? How do we strive to do that? So on the rising tide front, that's one angle of it. Now, if you flip over to the tech side of it, you see companies like Uber who, like, there's an actual conversation out here in Silicon Valley where they say, oh, it's bro culture. We're looking at startups and they refer to it as bro culture. Now, for people who aren't aware of sort of what I'm referring to, Uber obviously just had a huge scandal in which there was a lot of sexual harassment that came to light, and the idea of sort of even not just like it was just it's a disaster. The conversation basically revealed a lot that was very ugly about this company, and it sparked conversation at Google. It sparked conversation all over. And you know, the truth is this: in tech, especially in Silicon Valley, we have been working very hard. And when I say we, I say women as a collective, to encourage, you know, basically women in tech and coding and engineering. The truth of the matter is, though, out here, it's very rare. It's not common to see a lot of women engineers on the floor of a pro dev team. It's not. And so you'll have these startups where it is predominantly male, and the women that are there are in roles that are different. They're in the marketing departments or, you know, very rarely even in leadership. Now, I'm very fortunate that here at HoneyBook, that is not the case. We are 60% female, and our executive team is also 60% female as well. So we're definitely an anomaly in the space, but we also have 2 female co-founders that ensure that they care immensely about diversity and inclusion, not just across gender lines, but across all lines. And it's been a huge thing here that I'm just really proud to be a part of. But that's not the case everywhere. So I can understand and definitely empathize with your wife. I think that, you know, if I've learned one really valuable thing over the past couple of years, it's that every human being brings something incredibly valuable to the table. And the minute something starts to look, you know, uniform and like everyone is the same, you're missing out on the ability to gather brilliance from minds that are far different. And I think that it's also scary in the tech world because, and this is just my own personal opinion, I don't want technology being created by one segment of the population for everyone. If everyone's going to be shaped in technology, or society is going to be shaped by technology, we need it being created by all the individuals who will be impacted by it. And so diversity in tech especially is very important. And
the reason why I love your take on this is because you're making it happen, and it's not just a passion thing. Like, you know the science behind why this matters. And okay. We've talked about it. I know that you've talked about it before, but like how, on a brain neuroscience level, there are differences in men and women that allow for strengths to come out.
Yes. Absolutely. No, there are. And there are interesting books about it. One of which is The Buying Brain. So it's a great book. If anyone is interested in this stuff, it's The Buying Brain. And what it really, so it's coming at it from the perspective, and we talked about before, using technology to sell. It's coming at it from the perspective of how do you sell to a female brain versus a male brain. And you see this in advertising. It's like the best place to really look for evidence of it. You know, if you're targeting women, you're going to show things like, you know, a group of women together at a table. Why? Because women crave community. It's the way our brains are wired. You know, evolutionarily, the female basically developed in a space in which they had to do a lot of things well. They had to, I mean, the book is phenomenal. So read the book. But basically, it talks about how the brain evolved, the female brain slightly evolved differently. Again, people argue on this topic. It's not necessarily something that's accepted by all. But it's something that has been studied, and it's very fascinating. And when we bring these different types, it's not even 2 types, it's not binary. Like it's across the board. Like
you said that.
Yeah, it's not. It's like it's the diversity of all these different brains, both physical and minds, right, that come together, that merge to enable really phenomenal things to happen. And when we only have one type of brain or mind running something, sprinting forward towards something, regardless of who that is or what group that is, it really limits the ability for success. And it's something that we think a lot about, but advertising is a space where you see it a lot. You see the way different companies market towards different demographics. And those shifts also are indicative of a lot of the research that they do to identify what's going to get, you know, one person to buy versus somebody else. But it's an interesting space, especially right now, because the conversation is very, right now it's very much focused on, you know, social justice, and people aren't paying a lot of attention to the manipulation happening on the, you know, sales level So it's interesting. Like
I think it's, I'm really fascinated with all this. You guys in the comments, write down just the word brain, and I'll follow up with the link to this book. What's it called again, Natalie?
So there's The Buying Brain. So The Buying Brain, I believe, is Pradeep. There's also Brainfluence by Roger Dooley that I mentioned. We'll link to it and we'll give you access to these books. It's fascinating. And it also just really, it requires us to think very hard about even what's shaping our own decisions. But it's interesting. It's really
it's interesting, and it's also it's really useful. And I think as soon as you adopt this mindset of a business owner, these types of questions become pretty powerful when you try and answer them. So I think that's great. Before I want to totally respect your time. We're coming close to this hour here. I feel like it's only been like 5 minutes long. You guys, Tuesdays together. I've been to, so let's chat a little bit about it. So how did it start, the idea of these Tuesdays together meetings?
So really simply, we basically realized that technology is phenomenal in connecting us, but it's a handshake, it's not a relationship. And if we really want to make change in the industry and not just talk about it, but actually do it, here's the difference. A lot of people want to talk about it and they'll post an Instagram caption and be like, I did it, change. We didn't want to do that. We really wanted to reshape the culture. And so for us, it involves bringing people together, and that's how it started. It was like, let's get people together in Annapolis. There are traditional networking groups and there were other like educational groups in our hometown. We definitely weren't the first ones to ever come up with getting people together over coffee, but we wanted to do it our way. And so we basically took our spin on it, and it caught on. And so now we have over 400, it's like 427 now, of these chapters, these Tuesdays Together chapters around the world. They meet once a month. They discuss the business topic, but every chapter is also different. So you'll see, for instance, like some chapters are really, intentional about the education aspect. Even here in the Bay Area, we've got the Oakland chapter. It's amazing, very intimate, very small, and it's very education focused. Versus the SF chapter, just a couple miles away, is very social. Everyone here comes and they chat and they hang out. They drink a lot of wine, and then they talk about business. And so, even within the chapters, if there are a couple in your area, feel them all out. They're all different and they're led by volunteers. But yeah, it just started from this idea that we've got to get people together in real life in order to make the kind of change that we want to make.
I think it's awesome. And like I said towards the beginning of the show, I have personally felt the need for this type of a community as a solo business owner. So if you guys are also running your own businesses and you're feeling kind of that alienation that comes with just being by yourself with your computer a lot, these are fantastic communities to be a part of. And just so put Tuesdays in the comments, and put Tuesdays and then also where you're at. And we'll find a way to link it up to the local chapter that you can find. Yeah. Maybe we can tag Kate in here and she can help out.
It will definitely help. Here's the most important thing I always say when I talk about this. My goal, obviously I want everyone to go to a Tuesdays Together, check it out, try it out, discover a chapter that you love. But there are a lot of you in here that are going to check it out and go, oh, I don't know if this is for me. This just isn't for me for whatever reason. I don't care. Find a community. Like, get looped in. It doesn't have to be Rising Tide. This is a community. Like, find communities and dig roots. Like, find them and get involved. Because again, it goes back to this idea, whether it's Rising Tide, whether it's here, in this Facebook group, wherever it is that you find that collaboration and that environment of cooperation, you have to do it. You just do. It's not a question of me wanting you to join Rising Tide. Obviously, I want you to. Not going to lie. I do. I believe we're doing great things. But I would much prefer that you find a community that's right for you, regardless of which one that is. So that's like, I always need to say that because I feel like sometimes it's easy to go, she's pitching Rising Tide. Of course I am. I work for Rising Tide. Like, this is my baby. I want you to join it. But what I actually care more about is that you find a community that really aligns with what you're trying to do. It helps you accomplish your goals. I think Brandon mentioned Rotary. There's B&I groups. There's all these different things. They're all very different. So just find what's going to meet your needs and listen, like, invest the time. It is worth it.
I think it's great. So Natalie, thank you so much for taking the time, for going in early to the office to find a quiet space.
No, thank you for having me. This was so much fun. And I hope there was some valuable tidbits in there for you guys. And I'd love to connect with anyone, you know, here,
Hey,
offline, wherever.
if people are watching, that's great. But I do this for me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I'm really passionate about this idea that I think that my role as an attorney is to help businesses that are already thriving. And I know that there are a lot of businesses who aren't yet at a place where they have assets worth protecting.
Yeah.
And whatever I can do to help connect people in that situation with someone who can help them at a more foundational level, whether that's with sales or finding that community that can give them, the sustainability that they need to keep at it. I just think this has been a great conversation. So thanks so much, Natalie. We'll do this again.
Yes. Yes. No, I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. See you, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.